Hi, I'm Catherine Sanders. I hit 32 this past spring, and for most of my life, my role in the family was crystal clear, second fiddle to my sister Rachel. Rachel, 3 years my senior, was the undisputed golden child. She soaked up all the attention, the compliments, the extra perks, and the prime bedroom. According to our parents, she was flawless. She tied the knot at 24, had 2 sons by 27, whipped up homemade casseroles, mailed Christmas cards in September. Me. Stayed single, poured myself into my career, and lived in a quiet apartment across town where nobody pestered me about. Settling down, I had a solid 401k, a Roth IRA, and 0 plans to ask anyone for a handout. Apparently none of that matters if you're not sporting a wedding band. My parents, Linda and Jerry, never explicitly said it, but their questions always hit hard. Don't you want kids before it's too late? Your nephews are growing up so fast. It's a shame they don't have cousins. Still in that apartment, huh? I mastered the art of nodding and changing the topic. I used to believe if I just worked hard enough, they'd finally see me through the same lens as Rachel. But the reality slowly dawned on me like dust accumulating on neglected shelves. I wasn't the daughter they boasted about. I was the one they simply took for granted, assuming I'd always manage. Even so, I never griped. I showed up for holidays, troubleshooted their Wi-Fi, remembered their birthdays with wine, even my own, which they often forgot, mostly. I kept my distance. It felt like the safest approach. I had no idea then that distance wouldn't be enough, that eventually they'd try to reel me in so tightly I'd barely recognize myself. Rachel's seemingly perfect life started to unravel. It's much like delicate china, a quiet crack at first, then shattering all at once. Her husband David had been having affairs for years. She stumbled upon the messages, or perhaps she was finally ready to admit what had been obvious all along. When she filed for divorce, no one faulted her, not even mom and dad. David vanished soon after. No child support, no apology, just gone. Rachel was left with her 2 boys, Ethan and Jamie, and a mountain of bills she couldn't handle solo. Our parents offered verbal support, but their funds were locked away in retirement accounts and a general reluctance to spend. Rachel ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment where the boys bunked together and the wallpaper was peeling. I didn't hesitate. Paid her lawyer's upfront fee. Covered 6 months of her rent when her part-time job at the community center didn't. Cut it. I even took the kids for a few weekends so she could catch her breath. I never mentioned it, never expected anything in return. I adored my nephews. And Rachel, despite her former glow, seemed shattered, like someone unaccustomed to asking for help and resenting the need for it. Still, I thought, maybe now our parents will finally get it. Maybe this time, they'll understand I'm not the one who needs to prove anything. They didn't. Instead, every chat with mom began with a status report on Rachel's struggles immediately, followed by, "Are you seeing anyone yet?" I stayed quiet, helped where I could, telling myself that being family meant showing up, even when you were sick of being overlooked. But here's the thing about always being the reliable one. Eventually, people stop seeing your assistance as a favor and start treating it as an expectation. It was a Wednesday when my mother called. "Catherine, honey, we have such wonderful news. Can you come over tonight?" Her voice held a cheerfulness I hadn't heard in months, maybe even years. For a second, I wondered if David had reappeared, if the courts had finally tracked him down, or if Rachel's situation had simply improved. "Is it about the boys or the child support?" I asked. No, even better," she chirped. "Just come on over. Your father's already home, and Rachel will be here too." I drove across town after work, feeling tired but curious. There was something off about her tone, a little too practiced, too smooth, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe, just maybe, for once, it really was good news. When I stepped into the living room, they were already settled. Dad in his recliner, Mom perched on the edge of the couch, and Rachel beside her, smiling nervously. On the coffee table sat a manila folder. "There she is," Dad said, standing to give me a hug, then handing me the folder. "Take a look. Inside was a stack of documents, thick with legal jargon and real estate company logos. At the very top, a mortgage agreement. "What is this?" I asked. "It's for Rachel's new house," Mom beamed. We used most of our savings and some of our retirement funds for the down payment. Isn't it fantastic? I blinked. You bought a house? Yes, she confirmed. A lovely place. 3 bedrooms, a big yard for the boys. They need stability. This apartment just isn't cutting it. I glanced at Rachel, who offered a small nod but remained silent. That's great, I said honestly. The boys will love that. I started to hand the folder back. No, those are for you, Mom insisted, pushing it back towards me. What do you mean for me? Dad cleared his throat. We've discussed this as a family, and we've decided you'll take over the mortgage. You've been saving for years. You can easily manage the payments. Rachel can't afford it, Mom added softly. She's doing everything she can, but the boys really need this. The room fell silent. I felt every eye on me. You're asking me to pay for Rachel's house? I repeated. Rachel still wouldn't meet my gaze. After David left, I have nothing, she mumbled. I can't provide what they need without help. I looked at the mortgage again. The amount was staggering. I already paid for her divorce, I said quietly, and half a year of her rent. I've been saving for 10 years for my own home, sweetheart, Mom said, reaching for my hand. We raised you. You've done so much. Isn't it time to give back? My heart pounding, I stood up. You bought a house knowing she couldn't afford it because you just assumed I'd cover it. Dad didn't deny it. You don't have a husband or children, he stated flatly. I'm not doing this, I declared. This isn't help. This is manipulation. I left the folder on the table, unopened, and walked out before I could start yelling. I figured they'd calm down. I convinced myself they'd eventually see how outrageous it was. That asking your single daughter to finance her sister's home wasn't something most reasonable people would condone. I was mistaken. The first call arrived that Saturday from my cousin Tiffany, someone I hadn't seen since Grandpa's funeral. April told me what happened. She began. No greeting, no hesitation. I can't believe you're being so heartless. Excuse me? Shot back. Rachel's a single mom, Catherine. Those boys are your nephews. You're sitting on all that money and refusing to help. I gripped the counter. Tiffany, you don't know the whole story. I know enough. Family helps family. Before I could retort, she added, Rachel would do the same for you. A bitter, involuntary laugh almost escaped me. No, she wouldn't, I said softly. You're unbelievable, she snapped, then hung up. After that, the texts started, then voicemails from people I barely knew. Uncle Don, Jessica, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, all piling on. The messages blurred into a single chorus. You're selfish. They raised you. She has children. You don't. What struck me most wasn't the anger, but the absolute certainty. As if they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was in the wrong. That because I hadn't built a family of my own, I was now fair game to bankroll someone else's. The worst came from Aunt Pat, my mom's older sister. She called during dinner. I just want to talk some sense into you, she said, using that sickly sweet tone she'd perfected. You're not getting any younger, Catherine. Who knows if you'll ever have kids? At least this way, you'd be contributing to your family's future. So, because I'm single, I said, I owe Rachel a house. Don't be so dramatic. They need help, and you. Well, you're in a position to give it. That night, I blocked every single number that had joined the chorus. If they couldn't respect my boundaries, they didn't deserve my peace. And deep down, I finally admitted something I'd been avoiding. This was never about the house. It never was. 2 months went by. I heard nothing from my parents, Rachel, or anyone else I hadn't already blocked. I buried myself in work, took morning walks, and let the silence settle into something resembling peace. Then the envelope arrived. It came on a Thursday, thick and official looking. At first, I thought it was just insurance paperwork, but when I opened it, my stomach sank. They were suing me. Linda and Jerry Sanders. My own parents had filed a formal civil claim. They were demanding $350,000 in reimbursement for expenses related to Catherine Sanders' upbringing. I read it twice, then 3 times. Each line was colder than the last. They itemized food, clothing, education, They even included a section titled Emotional Support During Adolescence, which I couldn't read without a cynical laugh. They tried to count family vacations from when I was 6. Simplified at the very end, in plain language. Funds to be used to complete the mortgage on the Sanders property purchased for Rachel Sanders and her minor children. They weren't subtle. They didn't even bother to pretend it was about principles. I immediately called the best lawyer I could find. Jennifer Madsen met with me the next day. She wore glasses, spoke with the weary wisdom of someone who'd seen it all, and didn't flinch once as I laid out the entire story. They have no legal right to your money, she stated flatly, flipping through the packet. Parents are obligated to provide for their minor children. There's no legal expectation of repayment. So why are they suing me? I asked. Jennifer shrugged. It's a pressure tactic. They think you'll cave to avoid court, or they genuinely believe you owe them. I felt numb, then angry, then ashamed for feeling either. Over the next 3 weeks, I meticulously gathered everything. Proof of the $7,200 I'd paid for Rachel's rent. The $5,500 check to her divorce attorney, bank transfers to my parents over the years, $500 here, $1,000 there, from my mother, asking for just a little help when Dad's pension ran short. I unearthed receipts I didn't even remember keeping. Pulled records from old email accounts. Every single document was a memory I never wanted to relive. When the court date arrived, I wore gray slacks and a blouse my grandmother had given me years ago. I brought only what was essential, along with Walter and Maggie, who showed up in quiet defiance of their own daughter. Grandma squeezed my hand. What they're doing isn't right, she whispered. But you already know that. Across the aisle, my parents sat with Rachel beside them. She avoided my gaze completely. I told myself to breathe, not to hope. This wasn't about changing their minds. It was about asserting that minds still mattered. The courtroom felt colder than it should have been in midsummer. The walls were beige, the carpet thin. I remember wondering who chose those chairs. Hard, unyielding plastic, as if designed to punish those waiting. My parents sat on the left, Rachel between them, and behind them, aunts and uncles, people who hadn't sent me a birthday card in years, now here to support the family. On my side sat just 2 people, Grandpa Walt and Grandma Maggie. Wore a brooch I hadn't seen since I was a child. When she leaned over to squeeze my hand, I nearly broke down. Then the judge entered. He appeared to be in his 60s, graying at the temples, glasses resting low on his nose. The kind of man who didn't rush to speak because he'd already heard every conceivable lie. My father stood first. Your Honor, he began. We're not unreasonable people, but we invested our lives, our money, our time into raising Catherine. We're only asking for a portion of that back to help our other daughter and her children. The judge didn't flinch. Specifically, he said, flipping a page, what did you spend on her education after she turned 18? Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances. Dad cleared his throat. Well, at that time, Rachel had just gotten married. We were helping her and her husband get established. So, the judge clarified, you did not contribute to the defendant's college expenses. No, Mom said quickly. But my mother, Catherine's grandmother, did. And since she's my mother, I'd argue we supported her indirectly. From behind me, Grandma let out the faintest scoff. Jennifer rose, calm and methodical. Your Honor, we have documentation showing that Ms. Sanders has been financially independent since the age of 18. In addition, she has provided repeated financial support to both her parents and her sister. She handed over the file. Bank transfers, receipts, emails. This includes $7,200 in rent payments for her sister, $5,500 to her divorce attorney, and multiple direct deposits to her parents during times they reported financial hardship. The judge reviewed the documents quietly, then looked up. So, the defendant wasn't receiving support, but giving it, correct? Correct, Jennifer confirmed. My mother shifted in her seat. That money isn't relevant, she argued. We're talking about the cost of raising her food, shelter, emotional guidance. Why exactly? The judge asked, do you need $350,000 now? Mom hesitated, then looked at Rachel. To help Rachel pay off the mortgage, she said softly. Silence. Even Uncle Don shifted uncomfortably behind her. The judge turned to Rachel. Miss Sanders, do you believe your sister should be responsible for your home loan? Rachel finally looked up. She's not married. She doesn't have children. I do, and that creates a financial obligation, she argued. We're family. The judge raised an eyebrow. I am not married either. Should I pay for my clerk's rent or my bailiff's children? Rachel blinked, saying nothing. The judge turned back to my parents. Did you financially support Catherine after she became an adult? We were helping Rachel, Dad repeated.
Oh, you
Prioritize one daughter over another, he stated plainly. No accusation, just fact. They didn't answer. For the next hour, he asked tough questions. Not cruel, but unwavering. Did they assume I would pay? Why purchase a house they knew Rachel couldn't afford? Why tie help to guilt and guilt to debt? Their answers crumbled under their own weight. As we stepped outside, Grandma was the first to hug me. You held your ground, she said. That's more than I can say for anyone else in that room. I wasn't. Sure if I truly won? Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one being judged. The verdict arrived a week later. The courtroom felt smaller the second time, perhaps because I could finally breathe freely within its walls. The judge wasted no words. After reviewing the evidence, I find the plaintiff's claim to be without merit. Mr. and Mrs. Sanders, the financial responsibility of raising a child does not entitle you to reimbursement once that child becomes an adult. He glanced down at his notes, then back up. In fact, the evidence suggests Ms. Catherine Sanders has already provided significant financial support to both you and her sister. Then, quietly but firmly, he added, frankly, I find your behavior toward your daughter to be brazen and disappointing. Dismissed. Just like that. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I simply stood there while Jennifer smiled. Grandma squeezed my arm, and Grandpa whispered, You're free. I thought it was all over. It wasn't. A week later, Grandma called. Your mother came by yesterday, she said, her voice weary. She asked us to release her inheritance early. For what? I asked, though I already knew. To pay off Rachel's mortgage, she replied. I sank into a chair. What did you tell her? I told her we haven't decided who gets what. The will is ours to manage. Did she get angry? No, Grandma said. She begged us not to disinherit her. I couldn't tell what stung more, that she asked, or that her tears were for money, not for me. Months drifted by, quiet ones. I closed on a small house, nothing grand, but entirely my own. I painted the kitchen. A bright yellow, planted tomato seedlings, and adopted a solemn, marble gray cat, who now sleeps beside my laptop every night. Rachel, meanwhile, rented out her house and moved back in with our parents. Mom babysat while Rachel worked. Somehow, they made it work. I didn't call. I didn't write. Then almost a year after the trial, an email landed in my inbox. No subject. Line. Just this. We heard you bought a house. Since you now have extra space, we think it would be best if Rachel and the boys moved in with you. It would be much more convenient for them there. Let us know when they can move in. Love, Mom and Dad? I read it twice. I didn't get angry, simply replied. I will not be hosting Rachel or the boys. If you contact me again with these kinds of demands, I will report the harassment to the police.
Ow.
Do not email me again. Then I hit send, blocked the email address, and made myself a cup of tea. These days, my house smells like fresh basil and coffee. My cat, Marble, sits on the windowsill most mornings, watching birds he'll never chase. I painted the kitchen yellow, just like I always wanted, and the tomatoes out back are finally ripening. It's peaceful here. No raised voices, no questions I don't want to answer. Grandma and Grandpa visit often. They bring pie or old newspaper clippings they think I'll enjoy. Grandpa helps with the gutters. Grandma still reminds me to lock my windows. At night, even though I have a security system, they don't talk about my parents unless I bring it up, and I rarely do. One Sunday, as we sat on the porch swing, Grandma said, Your mother's still talking about you, still telling people you abandoned. Rachel, I didn't respond. Your Aunt Pat told her to stop bringing it up at family gatherings, she added. Said no one wants to hear it anymore. That part made me smile. I'm not naive. I know they still believe I failed some unspoken test of loyalty that I should have. Stepped up, even if it meant sacrificing everything I'd built. But I also know this. I sleep better now. Rachel, from what I hear, is still living at home, renting out the house to cover the mortgage. The boys are growing fast. Sometimes I wonder what they've been told. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever reach out, but I don't wait for it. Dating someone, Mark, who is kind and has a laugh that feels like it creates space. He doesn't ask about my family. It's not yet. And I don't offer. Some ties don't need explaining. Some ties don't need mending. Every once in a while, I feel that ache of what could have been. If they'd ever seen me as more than spare parts. If love hadn't come with fine print. But I don't regret saying no. Not anymore. Because peace, I've learned, isn't given. It's earned.